Good afternoon. The Congress Party is holding its Chintan Shivir in Jaipur. And from the various leaders' comments, we understand it is a meeting to look into, to do a review, and to carry out a lot of introspection, which is good for any party. And we don't need to comment that it is welcome. It is certainly, as a political process, I think it's very important for all parties to do it. But from the speech of Srimati Sonia Gandhi, they already give us signs that they are missing an opportunity. A review, an honest review at that, doesn't seem to be in the offing. I say this because she has failed to acknowledge that the government lacks leadership, in fact lacks integrity, and probably, certainly, lacks direction. Instead of admitting to this and looking into the reasons for this, they are probably searching for an alibi for their non-performance. And that seems to be the sum and substance of that which comes out from her speech. In fact, it has probably even gone a little to the other extreme, in that there was self-certification about the excellent growth which this country has seen in the last 8-9 years. A self-certification which goes with also an admission that to give 1 crore jobs is a chunauti, is a challenge, an admission that they could not provide the jobs that they promised. The jobs that they had promised both in the manifesto and in their Burari summit. In this context, it is important for all of us to remember that Standard & Poor or any other rating agency has been talking about India's credit ratings, India's economy strengths. It's not the BJP which it says. And many experts in the country have also been talking about it. The experts in our country who are talking about it have very clearly voiced how jobless this growth narrative of the Congress is. And that's been proved by the NSSO data which came sometime middle of last year. I do not want to go into the greater details of numbers, the statistics, this versus that kind of an argument about NDA time, BJP time versus the Congress time. But the fact remains that the NSSO data has very clearly said this was a jobless growth, and Srimati Sonia Gandhi today has accepted that to provide 1 crore jobs is indeed a chunauti. A late realization, but never realization nevertheless. This is exactly the criticism with which all of us have been reminding the government that growth alone is not the remedy for many of the ills which are, dominating in the economy, and that during the so-called, 5-6% growth which NDA consistently provided, I underline that line, consistently provided. We did not fluctuate between 9, 7, 8, sometimes speculating, now it's come down to 5, then it went on to something else. No, a consistent growth which also had jobs. Whereas what we now see is a fluctuating series of disputed figures on growth, but a growth narrative nevertheless, which, with Mrs. Sonia Gandhi admitting, has not provided the jobs for the people. And if credit rating agencies have come up periodically about the economy's buoyancy, the government said no, they are looking at wrong figures. But today, it is a story which is very well established. We are constantly under the threat of being downgraded in the ratings. And again, the 100 days promise about controlling price rise. Where has that gone? Leave 100 days. We are now at the 9th year of their term, and not more than 15 months are on for the next general election if it goes on as per schedule. Women's safety, price rise were issues about which 100 days promises were given. And let me remind again here, after the promise, when the heat was on about not controlling inflation, when Sri Pranab Mukherjee was the finance minister, when their high-level committees formed with members of all other political parties, also chief ministers, to look into how best prices can be controlled, how best public distribution system can be improved upon, and also to look into futures and commodity markets. This government has not had any action taken on any one of those high-level committees. They all came up with their reports with doable actions. Doable actions were not even followed up. So the review that the Congress party is doing today, I ask them if the government, and there is a disconnect is what is being talked about, if the government had appointed these committees with eminent people in it, why was no action taken on them? Because those are important for common man, we raise it today. You didn't bother to look into the committee's recommendations, nor could you act on them. So your Chintan should actually go into greater details as to why the government failed to act on its own committees and their recommendations. Whether it is on corruption, whether it is on price rise, you didn't touch any one of the recommendations. In fact, there is an attempt to even keep it in a closet as regards Shunglu committee. Talking about women-related securities, I'll just bring it down to one simple argument which will explain it all. This Chintan Shivir is happening in Jaipur. In Rajasthan, one of the Congress MLA's husband is absconding, who's accused of rape charges, and the victim is running from pillar to post to say, give me justice. Rajasthan's Congress government is not worried about it. I think it's time that the Congress party speaks and does its own action reflective of what it speaks. If you're really worried about women and their safety because it's shaken the national consciousness is what the expression was used. What answer do you give the victim of this MLA's husband? Coming that incident is also from Rajasthan. And talking about corruption, I'm surprised that on the one hand you remove somebody from the union cabinet on charges of corruption. You have promoted this person as a chief minister, if anything, much before the charges could even be proved or disproved in the court. So Congress party's Chintan Shivir, I mean, my Hindi is poor. I for a minute thought, is this a Chinta Shivir which is going on? If you're really looking at issues, just do not speak about it if you do not want to follow it up. And if you're speaking about it, certainly. Your manifesto in 2009 had specific lines. They had said that they will provide energy security for everybody. We will ensure energy security. I'm quoting from the manifesto of the Congress 2009. We will ensure energy security for everybody. We will implement a scheme to supply energy to poor families at affordable prices. What do we find today? Today, particularly today, you're fluctuating on the ceiling or the cap that you brought on LPGs. 6 sometimes, 9 sometimes, or else 6 it is for some time, and then you lecture to other governments to say, if you want to do it at your level, but why don't you do it at that level? Rather than keeping up the promise that you've given in your own manifesto of 2009. Affordable energy for the poor? What is this increase in diesel price that you've come up with? When inflation is remaining uncontrolled, I take this opportunity to go back to the statement or the preface to the Chintan Shivir, that Sri Jairam Ramesh has given us. He has spoken about, yes, it was a policy during Devagowdaji's time, also during NDA time, to have small increases. Please let us not talk about just in patches. NDA time, there was a policy. There is no policy now. Increases, if it were done, and after deregulation, the increases were very small. That's what you want to come to do now. You're learning from the experience of NDA and others very well. We are happy for the nation. But that is exactly what you've been criticizing for the last 9 years. You have changed about 4 petroleum ministers. There is no consistency in your policy. I'm glad to say during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, there was just one Sri Ram Nayak who completed his full 5 years, and energy, LPG distribution, nothing of it worried the common man. He could take as many cylinders as he wanted without hesitation, and he could have as many new connections as he wanted without thinking about it. But what is this government doing now after having stated in its manifesto that they will give energy security? So the Congress's review meeting which is going on is setting a roadmap for 2014 as is reported from the media, through the media. If their talk and if their deeds don't match, and if the review is not an honest review, I am afraid we stand vindicated on very many criticisms which we have shown in the last few years. Thank you.